Hey, just before I kick off the show today, I want to say this. One of my aims with this YouTube channel is to create the most respectful comment section on the internet for the sport of rugby. And the way that I'm going to do that and keep doing that is to ask you all to make sure that whenever you leave a comment on this channel, that you respect other people's comments and opinions, no matter how silly you might think it is. They're entitled to it, and everybody has an opinion, and I want everybody to be able to share their opinion on this channel. And I want to just prove that social media can be a very positive thing for sport around the world. So there you go, join me in my aim, and if that's the sort of channel that you want to be part of, then hit the subscribe button and stay around for more. G'day everyone, welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. This is the preview show, and I'm looking at the second test match between the South African Springboks and the Australian Wallabies to be played in Cape Town on Saturday. So let's get into the show right now. Okay folks, it's going to be another huge weekend for rugby in the Rugby Championship this weekend. You keep a lookout for squirrels behind me, and I'll keep talking about what I think is going to happen in the South Africa versus Australia game. Now, if you didn't watch my video yesterday, I posted a video talking about how I think the Wallabies might be able to beat the Springboks this weekend. But as I promised in that video, I'll come back with a preview show, which is this video, to talk about the actual game. Now that we've got both teams named, I'm going to go through the Australian team in this video, because we hadn't had that up until a few hours ago. And of course, Russie has already put out the Springboks team, so we can talk about now what is likely to happen at DHL Stadium in Cape Town on Saturday. So first of all, let's get on to the Wallabies team and have a look at what Joe Schmidt's done. A couple of pieces of news for you. First of all, we knew that Dylan Peach had broken his jaw. He was going to be out of this game, so he needed to be replaced on the wing for the Wallabies. So then the other replacement, unfortunately, is going to be Harry Wilson, their number 8 and captain, of course, who had that knee injury as he scored his second try in the weekend. So that's a shame for the Wallabies, so he's been replaced as well. And the third replacement the Wallabies had to make was James Slipper. Yes, the prop has unfortunately succumbed to an HIA concussion protocol, and he won't be taking place either. So those are the replacements that we had to look at through injury. But what else has Joe Schmidt done to be strategically clever in this particular game? Well, let's have a look at the team. We'll start off in the forwards. And in the front row, with James Slipper not there, we're seeing Robertson come in. Had a bit of an iffy series against the Lions, cost the Wallabies, I think, one of those games with some silly play at the end of the second test in those dramatic last minutes. But he's back to redeem himself, and he'll be joining Pollard and Taniela Tupou in the front row. Now, this, for me, that front row battle is going to be really important this weekend, and with Robertson in there for the Wallabies, how are they going to go up against Oxenchair, Malcolm Marx and Thomas du Toit? That's going to be one of the big areas that we all need to look out for in this game, particularly penalties arising from technical infringements in that scrum. That's going to be really, really important. Okay, moving on to the Wallabies and their locks, and we're going to see Nick Frost and Will Skelton back, so no changes there. Those two, as I said in yesterday's video, I thought have been playing really, really well. Look for them to be competing in line-out ball against the Springboks this weekend. That's going to be something they're going to have to do, I think, to give themselves some more chances of winning some strategic ball. And then moving on to the Lucies, and of course the back three are going to be vital for the Wallabies in this game. And we're going to see again Tom Hooper and Fraser McReight. Fraser McReight's going to be the captain of the Wallabies this time around. And I've heard a lot of good things about his leadership skills, so I haven't seen him be captain in any games yet, so it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. And then the good news for the Wallabies fans is Rob Valentini is back. Now, I just hope that Valentini's injury is 100% okay and he's ready to go. I hope they're not rushing him back into this team for this game because of Harry Wilson's situation. That would be diabolical for the Wallabies. They can't afford to have Valentini out for the rest of the Rugby Championship. So let's see how this 8 goes. I think this forward battle this weekend is going to be as intriguing as it was last weekend. Of course, in that first 20 minutes, the Springboks were absolutely dominant. Are they going to be able to repeat that early in this game? Whether the conditions allow them to, whether the Wallaby strategy allows them to, it's all going to be very, very interesting how this game starts off again. That's how I'm seeing it anyway. Okay, moving on to the backs for the Wallabies now, and starting at number 9, we've got Nick White again. Thought he played very well last weekend, particularly with his kicking. and the Wallabies, we're looking for another big game from him, particularly from his distribution and getting the ball out from the base of rucks and mauls and scrums. Something we've talked a lot about with halfbacks across this Rugby Championship, isn't it? It just seems the halfbacks these days, a lot of them are very slow. They telegraph their passes, and I'm not sure why that's happening with halfbacks these days. Never happened with Dave Loveridge back in the day, but that's yesteryear. Okay, moving on outside of Nick White, and we're going to see James O'Connor back again. I thought he played excellent last weekend. He really had two phases to that game, and so did the Wallabies, of course. I think it took James O'Connor a little bit of time to click into understanding how to read what was happening in that game, and once he did, he really started to pull the trigger, and a lot of things were done very well from O'Connor last weekend. So I'm suspecting he's going to be really up for this game. He proved himself last weekend. That would have given him a lot of confidence, and no matter the changes the Springboks have made, I'm sure James O'Connor's going to be up for it. Moving outside O'Connor, we've got Len Ekitau and Joseph Sua'ali back again this weekend, and as I've been saying in my videos, these two are growing on me as a midfield combination. Compare it to the All Blacks, these guys are way better at the moment, and they're showing a lot of intent, particularly around their spontaneity. We've talked about Sua'ali's tackling ability. He needs to improve that, there's no doubt about it, but the guy's a new recruit from Rugby League. He's going to need some time to get that right. And every game he plays, he should be getting better in that area of tackling. He's got to make sure he stays away from the high tackles. That could cost Australia in this game, and that's not something they need. Ekitau, I think, can be absolutely brilliant when it comes to finding space, and I mentioned yesterday about his little grubber kick. He can really make a difference with that, and he can turn the Springboks defensive line around. So watch out for Ekitau using that strategy if James O'Connor doesn't do it. I think that's one of the things that the Wallabies are going to be deploying. And then on the wings, well, we've got one change because of Dylan Peach, and we've got Corey Toole coming in for his first game. If you haven't watched Corey play, he's a speedster. He's a bit like Max Jorgensen. So now the Wallabies have two of those styles of wingers on their team, so that could be ultra dangerous for the Springboks. And if they underestimate Corey Toole, they're going to be in for some trouble, because he's a very, very fast, elusive runner, and I can't wait to see him have his first cap for the Australian Wallabies this weekend. And then we've got Max Jorgensen, who's got to be one of the best international test rugby wingers in the world at the moment. He's absolutely outstanding. I love watching this kid play. And then we've got Tom Wright at fullback, which was a great back three combination for the Wallabies this weekend. Dylan Peach is huge, a big guy, and did a lot of good things last week while he was on the field. But I think Corey Toole is just going to bring something a little bit more slicker for the Australian backline this weekend. So there we go. That's the starting 15 for the green and gold. Let me know what you think in the comments. Out of the inventory that Joe Schmidt did have to choose from, do you think he's put the best team on the field? I think he has. Hey, just a quick one. A huge thank you to everyone that heeded my call to action yesterday and hit the subscribe button to join this beautiful community. We're growing across the world. I really appreciate it. And if you can do the same again today, let's get moving. We're building a fantastic global rugby crowd here on Inside Rugby with Mark. Okay, looking at the bench for the Wallabies, and not too much different from last week. In the front row, we're going to see Amosa, Angus Bell and Zane Nongor. That's the front row. Again, it's going to be really big to see how they go, because the bench for the Springboks is different this weekend. They're going to have a different group to look at when they come on, and they're going to have to keep in the game in that last 20 minutes, because I think the dynamics of this game is going to be very different, and I'll talk about that after we finish the Wallabies team. Now moving on to the two other forwards that are going to be coming off the bench, and we're going to see Jeremy Williams, who I think is a great asset for this Wallabies team, coming off the bench. And we're going to see Nick Champion de Crepney. He's the other one that's going to come on. So a 5-3 split for Joe Schmidt this weekend. That's a rather big call, but I think it's the right call, because he's going to need to have some defence in the back line when it comes to the second half of this game. Talk about that in a second. And then the backs that are going to come off the bench, Tate McDermott, absolutely brilliant since the Lions series. He's been playing really, really well. Adds so much to this Wallabies team, because when I talk about injection off the bench, Tate McDermott personifies everything about impact off the bench. That's what you want to see from your number 9. And then Tane Edmed, who's untested really, in this kind of intensity, so it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. And then Andrew Callaway, who we saw last weekend, come on for the Wallabies as well. So there we go, that's the 23 for the Wallabies. What do I think? I like it. I think it's good. Given the restrictions that Joe Schmidt has had with injuries, I think this is the right team, and I think it's a very good team. Is it going to be good enough to beat the Boks at Cape Town, in Cape Town? Let's talk about that now. Okay, how is this game going to be different to the first one in Ellis Park? Well, first of all, the Springboks and their different team they've announced, they've already given away their intentions to a large degree. They're going to play this very cleverly through the forwards, but don't suspect to see anything different than what we saw in the first 20 minutes of that game at Ellis Park. I think that's the style of rugby that the Springboks are going to try and bring to this game. And if they start off again like they did at Ellis Park and they get 20 early points in this game, let's say in the first half, they're going to be extremely dangerous, and I don't think they're going to get run down like they did last weekend. I think there were a lot of different situations that happened last weekend that enabled the perfect storm for the Boks to get beaten at Ellis Park. I'm not taking anything away from Australia. If you've watched my videos over the last year, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of Joe Schmidt. You know that I've been talking up about the resurgence of this Australian Wallaby team, and we definitely saw that. But I think as part of their journey and getting back to one of the best teams of world rugby, they're going to have these occasions where they just fall off a little bit and they have a surprisingly poor game after a really good game. And I'm going to cite last year's Rugby Championship for that. They had that fantastic game in the first game of the Rugby Championship against Argentina last year, where they came back in the last minute of the game. Ben Donaldson kicked that goal and the Wallabies won by 1 point, 20 points to 19. And it really looked like that was the game that was going to turn around the fortunes of this Wallabies team. Unfortunately, the next weekend, Argentina put on 67 points against the Wallabies, and there was that huge letdown from the great performance the week before to what we saw the second week. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second we're going to see such a crazy fall off like we saw last year in that second game against Argentina from this Wallabies team compared to the game we saw at Ellis Park, but they need to be really careful that mentally they stay in this game as much as they did last weekend. I think that's what this game's going to come down to, because we're going to see a different Springboks team. We're going to see a Springboks team that's very focused and intent on playing their style of rugby. Andre Pollard and Willie LaRue are going to make a very big difference to this team. They're going to bring a different structure to it. And if we're going to see some changes in the Springboks team, we're going to see Sasha Feinberg and Gomu Zulu come on, and that's also going to show something different to the Wallabies in the last part of this game. So the Springboks' clever selections in this game have enabled them to have the ability to play different styles at rugby throughout the 80 minutes, and I think that's going to be really, really interesting. We didn't see that last time out from the Springboks. We saw a very one-dimensional approach, and they weren't able to do that for 80 minutes. They fell away from it. I think what Russie's selection has done in this game has enabled them to have the ability to be able to play two different styles. And by having Etzebeth and De Jager as two key people coming off the bench in the second half, we're going to see the ability of the Springboks to be able to play a different style of game, or to keep that style of game going that they start in the first half. So that's going to be really, really interesting from my perspective. So what I'm saying from the Wallabies this week is, mentally they have to stay really in it, because if they get behind again early in the game, it's going to put a lot of pressure on them, because they might be thinking themselves, oh, here we go, we've got to do it again. And that sometimes can lead you to fall off the cliff. But I think this Australian team's better than that. I'm expecting them to back up last weekend's performance with another good performance. Is it going to be good enough to win this game? I don't think so. I'm still going to back the Boks like I did last week, because I saw enough in that first 20 minutes to make me sit up and go, wow, this is an outstanding rugby team, and they were in that first 20 minutes. You know, I'm expecting all the hoopla that happened after that first game last weekend to have a really big impact on the Springboks team in a positive way. I think the experienced players that are coming in, they know what they need to do. They've been around the block a number of times. Willie LaRue, Andre Pollard, Etzebeth going to the bench. And despite that, I thought Etzebeth was one of the best players on the field last weekend for the Boks. He was enormous in that first half. So I think they have what it takes. Would I be surprised if Australia won again? No, because I think this is really the resurgence of the Wallabies team. It's very unlikely, in my opinion, as 70% of you have said on my poll as well, as we head towards this game, that the Springboks are likely to bounce back. Well, we all thought that the Springboks were going to have too much for the Wallabies in that first game. We're not at altitude this weekend. The conditions could be wet and in favour of Australia as they played in that third test against the British and Irish Lions. They took their opportunity. That's going to level up the breakdowns a lot more. And we could see the Aussies, particularly with Tom Hooper and Fraser McWright, making some really, really big key turnovers if the ball's going to be slippery and hard to get on in the breakdown situation. I think kicking's going to be really big in this game as well, both goal kicking and general play. So we've got a man like Handré Pollard that's the Iceman under pressure when it comes to kicking. So expect him to get a high percentage of goal kicks over, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some early penalties from scrum infringements from the Wallabies that the Springboks take some shots at goal just to put points on the board. But if they're feeling positive like they were last week, then we'll see those kick for touches. We'll see some lineouts and see whether or not they can get some dominance, and then try that rolling maul and get the likes of Malcolm Marx, Oxenchair and Marco van Staden close to the line and see if they can score some tries. That's going to be something to keep an eye out on. Grant Williams' performance this weekend is going to be interesting to watch. I thought he did play well last weekend, despite what a lot of people say. I like Grant Williams a lot. I think he's so fast and dynamic from that number 9 position. And I think with his box kicking again, we're going to see some contestables for the wingers to come up and really have a chance from the Springboks. So Tom Wright and Corey Toole and also Max Jorgensen, you better watch out. You're going to get some high balls. You're going to be tested in these conditions in Cape Town on Saturday. I'm agreeing with a lot of the Springbok supporters in the comments talking about discipline, penalties, too many penalties given away by the Boks. So let's see how that goes this weekend. That could also play a big role in it, specifically if Australia are getting pinned down in their own half and they're finding it difficult to get away. If they get the odd penalty at that time to free them up and to release the pressure, that could be a really telling moment. But for me, when I talk about momentum swings in the game, we saw it last weekend, a huge momentum swing. There's going to be momentum swings in this game. Who's going to be best at adapting? Last weekend, the Springboks were horrendous when it came to adapting to what the Wallabies were throwing at them. If they're able to tidy that up this week, what is Australia going to do to counteract that presence of the Springboks through that momentum swing? That's going to be a real key to this game. So I think this is going to be very mentally a tense game for both teams. I think that both groups of players are going to have to be really on it for the whole 80 minutes to work out what's going on in the game and how they can counteract it. So therefore, Handré Pollard and James O'Connor become very important players in this game, because they're going to have to read the game. And if Tane Edmed comes on at any stage in the game for the Wallabies, a young guy with not a lot of experience, that could also be a significant difference factor. How long are Will Skelton and Rob Valentini going to be able to last this weekend? Another key component of this game, I think, in terms of just keeping that bulk and energy and strength on the Wallaby side. So watch out for those two and how they're going. 59 minutes last weekend for Will Skelton. Rob Valentini wasn't there, of course. He's coming in to play in that number 8 role this weekend, which gives them another line-out option as well. So I think that's a good one. Let's keep our eye on the line-out battle as well. We've got R.G. Schneemann and Ruan Nortje from the Springboks. That's going to be really interesting against Will Skelton and Nick Frost. The Aussies need to compete in the Springboks line-out. They need to go up there and see whether they can win some cheap ball. Other than that, their defensive maul needs to be on song as well to make sure that they set up a platform to be able to try and steal that ball. There's no doubt about it, the bench is going to be significant in this game. As I mentioned before, we're going to see Etzebeth and De Jager come on. Those are the guys that were on the field in the first 20 minutes last week. They're going to come on in the back end of this game. And I don't think the Australian inventory with Jeremy Williams and Champion de Crepney have got the same kind of level. Well, I know they haven't in terms of experience. So that could be a key part of the game as well. There are so many different facets to this game that are really, really interesting. And I can't wait to break them all down and come back to you after the game and talk about how they played out. So what do I think is going to happen? Well, my gut feel again this weekend is South Africa is going to win it. I saw too much in that first 20 minutes that really excited me about how great the Springboks team is when they click into action and execute their game plan. So I think they're going to be better than they were last week. Maybe they can't do it for more than 40-50 minutes, but I think that will be enough. I just hope for Joe Schmidt and the Wallabies that they have a really good game. Even if they don't win it, that they really compete in this game, because then this tour to South Africa has been a really big success. They don't want to get trampled in this game. I think that would be a shame to see them have a really good week like last week and to fall off the cliff this week. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. And I want to see them go back home with their tails between the legs to take on Argentina and the All Blacks in this Rugby Championship as a revitalised Australian rugby team that we're all talking about, or most of us are. I know there's some of you in the comments that are still pretty negative on the Wallabies. Yeah, okay. So there you go. There's my thoughts on this one. Lots of different facets to the game. Really exciting as a rugby fan to watch this one again. Let me know in the comments your thoughts and opinions. Let me know if there's anything different that I haven't mentioned that you think we're going to have to watch out for in this particular game. I'll be back after the game, of course, with an in-depth review of the game, looking at the whole strategy and some of those things I talked about, whether or not they came to fruition and they were game changers in that particular game. And I'll give you all my latest thoughts around the outcome of the game. Now, if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Tell all your mates there's a Kiwi rugby fan in Mexico who's trying to make the world's most respectful comment section in rugby, and let's keep talking about this great game that we all love. Now, whether you're an Australian or a South African, enjoy the game on Saturday. Enjoy what your team does, whether you win or lose. Enjoy the great spectacle. Let's hope that rugby's the winner yet again, and that we can all talk about it in the positive lights like we did last weekend. So that's it for me for this preview show. You keep well, keep safe, keep enjoying your rugby all across the world, and I'll be back again really soon when I'll do a preview show of the All Blacks playing the Los Pumas in Argentina. Yes, the second test match is taking place at Buenos Aires this weekend on Saturday, and there'll be plenty to talk about in that preview as well. So until then, adios from Cancun, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.